Florida, the Sunshine State. For most people, the name conjures images of sparkling beaches, towering roller coasters, and maybe a few alligators sunning themselves by a swamp. But beneath the surface of this vacation paradise lies a history as deep, complex, and fascinating as any place on Earth. It's a story of ancient peoples, ambitious explorers, clashing empires, and relentless dreamers, all drawn to this sun-drenched peninsula. For thousands of years, this land has been a crossroads, a prize, and a sanctuary. Join us as we peel back the layers of time and uncover the epic history of Florida, a story far wilder than any theme park ride. Long before the first European ships appeared on the horizon, Florida was home to a thriving mosaic of Native American cultures. For at least 12,000 years, people lived in harmony with this land of abundance. From the Panhandle to the Keys, groups like the Calusa, the Tequesta, and the Apalachee built complex societies. They weren't just simple hunter-gatherers. The Calusa, for instance, were master engineers, constructing massive shell mounds and intricate canal systems on the southwest coast. They commanded a powerful chiefdom that controlled a vast trade network without relying on agriculture. In the north, the Apalachee were skilled farmers, cultivating maize, beans, and squash in the fertile Red Hills, creating villages that impressed even the first Spanish visitors with their organization and prosperity. These were sophisticated civilizations, with rich artistic traditions, complex spiritual beliefs, and a deep understanding of the land and sea that sustained them. Their legacy is etched into the very soil of Florida, a silent testament to the peninsula's original inhabitants. Everything changed in 1513. A Spanish explorer named Juan Ponce de León, sailing from Puerto Rico in search of new lands and rumored riches, sighted a lush, green coastline. It was the Easter season, known in Spanish as Pascua Florida, the Festival of Flowers, and so he named the land La Florida. Ponce de León's quest for the mythical Fountain of Youth was a famous legend, but the reality was more about gold, glory, and expanding the Spanish Empire. He made landfall near what is likely St. Augustine today, claiming the vast territory for Spain. His initial expeditions were met with fierce resistance from native tribes, and he was mortally wounded on a later voyage in 1521. But the door he opened would never be closed. His arrival marked the beginning of a new, often brutal, chapter in Florida's story, one that would see European powers vie for control of this strategic peninsula for the next 300 years. Following Ponce de León, a wave of Spanish conquistadors attempted to conquer and colonize Florida, but the land and its people proved formidable. Expeditions led by Panfilo de Narvaez and Hernando de Soto were epic disasters, plagued by starvation, disease, and constant warfare with native tribes. They found no great cities of gold, only hardship and death. But Spain's claim to Florida was soon challenged. In 1564, French Huguenots, Protestants seeking religious freedom, established Fort Caroline near modern-day Jacksonville. This was an intolerable threat to Catholic Spain and its shipping lanes. King Philip II dispatched Pedro Menendez de Aviles with a clear mission: drive out the French and secure Florida for Spain, once and for all. In Iuliu, Menendez established St. Augustine, just south of the French fort. What followed was a swift and ruthless campaign. He captured Fort Caroline, executed most of the French settlers, and cemented Spain's hold on the Atlantic coast. St. Augustine, founded in this crucible of conflict, would endure, becoming the oldest continuously inhabited European established settlement in the United States. For the next 2 centuries, Spanish Florida was a remote, sparsely populated, but strategically vital outpost of the empire. St. Augustine served as a military garrison, protecting the Spanish treasure fleets that sailed the Gulf Stream back to Europe. A network of Catholic missions stretched across North Florida, attempting to convert native tribes like the Apalachee into This mission system, while extending Spanish influence, also brought European diseases that devastated the native population. Life in Spanish Florida was a constant struggle against English pirates, rival colonies, and the ever-present threat of revolt. Sir Francis Drake sacked and burned St. Augustine in 1586. Later, colonists from the English colonies of Carolina and Georgia launched repeated attacks, further weakening Spain's grip and decimating the mission system. By the mid-18th century, The once thriving native populations of Florida had been all but wiped out by disease and warfare. The map of Florida was redrawn during the 7 Years' War, known in America as the French and Indian War. In 1763, Spain, which had sided with the losing French, was forced to cede Florida to Great Britain in exchange for control of Havana, Cuba. The British divided the territory into 2 colonies: East Florida, with its capital at St. Augustine, and West Florida, with its capital at Pensacola. They sought to develop the region's plantation economy, offering land grants to attract settlers. They built the King's Road, connecting St. Augustine to Georgia, a crucial piece of infrastructure that helped tie the colony to the other British territories to the north. But British rule was short-lived. When the American Revolution broke out, East and West Florida remained loyal to the Crown. They became a haven for loyalists fleeing the rebellious 13 colonies. However, Spain, seeing an opportunity for revenge, sided with the Americans and captured Pensacola in 1781. At the end of the war, the 1783 Treaty of Paris returned Florida to Spanish control. This second Spanish period was chaotic. Spain's empire was crumbling, and its hold on Florida was weaker than ever. The United States, a new and ambitious nation, now bordered Florida to the north. The territory became a lawless frontier, a refuge for escaped slaves who found sanctuary among the Seminole Indians, and a base for raids into American territory. The Seminoles themselves were a new people, a mix of Creek Indians who had migrated south, and the remnants of Florida's original tribes. Andrew Jackson, acting on his own authority, invaded Spanish Florida twice, in 1814 and again in 1818, in what became known as the First Seminole War. He captured Spanish forts and demonstrated that Spain could no longer defend its territory. Recognizing the inevitable, Spain finally agreed to cede Florida to the United States in 1819 through the Adams-Onis Treaty. In 1821, the American flag was officially raised over St. Augustine and Pensacola. A new era had begun. Florida became a U.S. territory in 1822, with Tallahassee chosen as its capital, a midway point between the established centers of St. Augustine and Pensacola. American settlers poured in, hungry for land to grow cotton and sugarcane. But there was one major obstacle: the Seminole people. The U.S. government implemented a policy of Indian removal, pressuring the Seminoles to give up their lands and move west of the Mississippi River. This led to decades of brutal conflict. The Second Seminole War, from 1835 to 1842, was the longest and costliest Indian war in U.S. history. Under the leadership of figures like Osceola, the Seminoles used their knowledge of the swamps and Everglades to wage a brilliant guerrilla war against the U.S. Army. Despite their incredible resistance, thousands of Seminoles were eventually killed or forcibly removed. A small number, however, retreated deep into the Everglades, refusing to surrender. Their descendants, the Miccosukee and Seminole tribes of Florida, live there to this day, a testament to their ancestors' unconquerable spirit. In 1845, with the Seminole issue largely settled in the eyes of the government, Florida was admitted to the Union as the 27th state. As a new state, Florida's economy was built on the plantation system, and thus on the institution of slavery. By 1860, nearly half of the state's population was enslaved. When the Civil War erupted, Florida quickly seceded and joined the Confederacy. While it saw fewer major battles than states like Virginia or Georgia, its contribution was vital. Florida was a key supplier of beef, salt, and other provisions to the Confederate Army, earning it the nickname the breadbasket of the Confederacy. Union forces, however, quickly blockaded the coast and occupied key ports like St. Augustine, Jacksonville, and Key West, which remained in Union hands throughout the war. The Battle of Olustee in 1864 was the largest battle fought in the state, a decisive Confederate victory that temporarily halted the Union advance into the interior. But like the rest of the Confederacy, Florida ultimately faced defeat. The end of the war in 1865 brought emancipation and the tumultuous period of Reconstruction. The late 19th and early 20th centuries transformed Florida from a rugged frontier into a modern state. Visionaries like Henry Flagler and Henry Plant built railroads down the length of the peninsula, opening up the interior and the southern coasts to development and tourism. Flagler's Florida East Coast Railway is legendary, connecting Jacksonville to Miami and eventually all the way to Key West via the incredible over-the-sea railroad. Along the way, he built lavish hotels like the Ponce de León in St. Augustine, and the breakers in Palm Beach, turning Florida into a winter playground for the wealthy elite. The state's population boomed. A land rush in the 1920s saw real estate prices skyrocket as speculators and dreamers flocked to the state, creating entire cities out of swampland. Seemingly overnight, this Florida land boom was a frantic bubble that eventually burst, foreshadowing the Great Depression. But the infrastructure was in place, and the dream of Florida had been planted in the national imagination. World War II was a pivotal moment for Florida. Its year-round good weather and long coastline made it an ideal location for military training. Bases sprang up across the state, training hundreds of thousands of soldiers, sailors, and pilots for the war effort. This massive federal investment built airports, highways, and deepwater ports. After the war, many of the servicemen who had trained here returned with their families, drawn by the sunshine and economic opportunity. This kicked off a massive post-war population boom that has continued virtually unabated to this day. The arrival of air conditioning made year-round living in the humid climate comfortable for the mass. In the 1960s, another monumental development arrived: the space race. NASA chose Cape Canaveral as its launch site, turning the Space Coast into the epicenter of America's journey to the moon. The latter half of the 20th century saw the creation of the Florida we know today. In 1971, Walt Disney World opened its gates near Orlando, transforming Central Florida from a landscape of cattle ranches and orange groves into the world's premier tourist destination. The arrival of Disney spurred an unprecedented wave of development, creating a sprawling metropolis of theme parks, hotels, and attractions. At the same time, Florida became a major hub for international trade and finance, particularly with Latin America. The state's demographics also changed dramatically, with waves of immigration from Cuba and other Caribbean and South American nations, creating the vibrant, multicultural society that defines South Florida. But this rapid growth has not been without its challenges. Issues like environmental conservation, particularly the protection of the fragile Everglades, managing urban sprawl, and preparing for the impacts of hurricanes and climate change are the new frontiers in Florida's ongoing story. From the ancient Calusa to the Spanish conquistadors, from the railroad barons to the rocket scientists, Florida's history is a relentless saga of transformation. It's a land of astonishing beauty and brutal conflict, of impossible dreams and harsh realities. It is a place constantly reinventing itself, a magnet for those seeking a new beginning, a piece of sunshine, or a fortune. The story of Florida is the story of America, amplified and accelerated, complex, dynamic, and ever-evolving tale written on a canvas of sand and water. The next time you walk on a Florida beach or visit one of its bustling cities, remember the long and incredible journey this land has taken. You are standing on historic ground. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more journeys into the past.